Hi, everybody. I'm really glad to see you here for another visit from Literature Out Loud through the kind graces of Thunder River Theater and ThunderStream. This month, we are featuring the work of Grace Paley, who was an outrageous and very opinionated feminist activist. Anything you want to know that had opinion related to it from about 1923 until about 1971, and she never stopped for a second. But in addition to all her activism and all of her wonderful other works, she graced us with some beautiful short stories, two of which will be read tonight by two of my most talented and most revered friends, Tessa Nelson, who's an actor in Denver, and Jeannie Walla, who is an actor in the Roaring Fork Valley, both of whom are extremely able and extremely talented, and I like them besides. So we get to have these people reading for us. Tessa is going to be reading one of her earlier collection of stories. It's two stories. It's called Two Short Sad Stories from a Long and Happy Life. And it deals with Grace's alter ego that she wrote about and fictionalized a little bit, whose name was Faith. And then Jeannie picks up the story of this same woman and her same children and her friends 20 years later in a piece entitled Friends. I'm so glad you came to be with us, and I hope you enjoy this. Tessa, would you lead off, please?
Absolutely. Two short, sad stories from a long and happy life. Part 1. The Used Boy Raisers. There were two husbands disappointed by eggs. I don't like them that way either, I said. Make your own eggs. They sighed in unison. One man was livid. The other was pallid. There isn't a drink around here, is there? Asked Livid. Never find one here, said Pallid. Don't look. Driest damn house. Pallid pushed the eggs away, pain and disgust his escutcheon. Livid said, Now really, isn't there a drink? Beer? He hoped. Nothing, said Pallid, who'd been through the pantries, closets, and refrigerators looking for a white shirt. You're damn right, I said. I buttoned the high button of my powder blue duster. I reached under the kitchen table for a brown paper bag full of an embroidery, which asked God to bless our home. I was completing this motto for the protection of my sons, who were also livids. It is true that some months earlier, from a far place, the British plains in Africa, he had written hospitably to Pallid. I do think they're fine boys, you understand. I love them too, but Faith is their mother, and now Faith is your wife. I am so much away. If you want to think of them as yours, old man, go ahead. Why, thank you, Pallid had replied, airmail, overwhelmed. Then he implored the boys, when not in use, to play in their own room. He made all efforts to be kind. Now, as we talked of time past and upon us, I pierced the ranch house that nestles in the shade of a cloud and a Norway maple, just under the golden script. Said Livid, dripping coffee on his pajama pants. You'll never guess who I met up with, Faith. Who? I asked. Saw your old boyfriend, Clifford, at the Green Coke. He looks well. One thing must be said, he addressed Pallid. She takes good care of her men. True, said Pallid. How is he? I asked coolly. What's he doing? I haven't seen him in 2 years. You'll never guess. He's marrying! A darling girl. She was with him. Little tootsies, little round bottom, little tummy. She must be 22, but she looks 17. One long yellow braid down her back. Oof, a darling girl. Stubby nose, fat little underlip, her eyes put on in pencil. Shoulders down like a dancer, slender neck. Oof, darling, darling. You certainly observed her, said Pallid. I've a functioning retina, said Livid. Then he went on, better watch out, Faith. You'd be surprised. The dear little chicks are hatching out all over the place, all the sunny schoolgirls rolling their big black eyes. I hope you're really settled this time. To me, whatever is under the dam is in another country. However, in my life, you remain an important person historically, he said. And that's why I feel justified warning you. I must warn you, watch out, sweetheart, he said, leaning forward to whisper harshly and giving me a terrible bellyache. What's all this about? Asked Pallet innocently. In the first place, she's settled, and then she's still an attractive woman. Look at her. Yes, said Livid, looking. An attractive woman. Magnificent sometimes. We were silent for several seconds in honor of that generous remark. Then Livid said, yes, magnificent, but I wanted to warn you, Faith. He pushed his eggs aside and remembered Clifford. A mystery wrapped in an enigma. I wonder why he wants to marry. I don't know, it just ties a man down, I said. And yet, said Pallid seriously, what would I be without marriage? In luminous recollection, a gay dog, he replied. At this moment the boys entered. Richard, the horse thief, and Tonto, the crack shot. Daddy! They shouted. They touched Livid, tickled him, unbuttoned his pajama top, whistled at the several gray hairs coloring his chest. They tweaked his ear and rubbed his beard the wrong way. Well, he cautioned. How are you boys? Have you been well? You look fine. Sturdy. How are your grades? He inquired. He dreamed that they were just up from Eton for the holidays. I don't go to school, said Tonto. I go to the park. I'd like to hear the child read, said Livid. Me, I can read, Daddy, said Richard. I have a book with 100 pages. Well, said Livid. Get it. I kindled a fresh pot of coffee. I scrubbed cups and harassed Pallid into opening a sticky jar of damson plum jam. Very shortly what could be read had been, and Livid, knotting the tie strings of his pants vigorously, approached me at the stove. Faith, he admonished. That boy can't read a tinker's dam. 7 years old. 8 years old, I said. Yes, said Pallid, who had just remembered the soap cabinet and was rummaging in it for a pint. If they were my sons in actuality, as they are in everyday life, I would send them to one of the good parochial schools in the neighborhood, where reading is taught. Reading! St. Bartholomew's, St. Bernard's, St. Joseph's. Livid became a deep purple and gasped. Over my dead body. Merd, he said in deference to the children. I've said, yes, you may think of the boys as your own, but if I ever hear they've come within an inch of that church, I'll run you through, you bastard. I was 14 years old when in my own good sense I walked out of that grotto of deception. Head up. You son of a bitch, I don't give a damn how au courant it is these days, how gracious to be seen under a dome on Sundays. Shit! Hypocrisy, corruption, cave dwellers, idiots, morons! Recalling childhood and home, poor Livid writhed in his seat. Pallid listened, head to one side, his brows gathering the onsets of grief. You know, he said slowly, we iconoclasts, we free thinkers, we latter-day Masons, we idealists, we dreamers, we are never far from our nervous old mother, the church. She is never far from us. Wherever we are, we can hear, no matter how faint, her hourly bells, tolling the countryside, reverberating in the cities, bringing to our civilized minds the passionate deed of Mary. Every hour on the hour, we are startled with remembrance of what was done for us. For us. Livid muttered in great pain. Those bastards. Oh, those contemptible, goddamnable bastards. Do we have to do the 19th century all over again? All right, he bellowed, facing us all. I'm ready. Then Newman, he turned to me for approval. You know, I said, this subject has never especially interested me. It's your little dish of lava. Pallid spoke softly, staring past the arched purple windows of his soul. I myself, although I lost God a long time ago, have never lost faith. What the hell are you talking about, you moron? Roared Livid. I have never lost my love for the wisdom of the church of the world. When I go to sleep at night, I inadvertently pray. I also do so when I rise. It's not to God, it is to that unifying memory out of childhood. The first words I ever wrote were, what are the sacraments? Faith, can you ever forget your old grandfather intoning Kaddish? It will be a sound in your ears forever. Are you kidding? I was furious to be drawn into their conflict. Kaddish, what do I know about Kaddish? Who's dead? You know my opinions perfectly well. I believe in the diaspora. Not only as a fact, but as a tenet. I am against Israel on technical grounds. I'm very disappointed that they decided to become a nation in my lifetime. I believe in the diaspora. After all, they are the chosen people. Don't laugh. They really are. But once they're huddled in one little corner of a desert, they're like anyone else. Frenchies, Italians, temporal nationalities, Jews have one hope only: to remain a remnant in the basement of world affairs. No, I mean something else. A splinter in the toe of civilization. A victim to aggravate the conscience. Livid and pallid were astonished by my outburst, since I rarely express my opinion on any serious matter, but only live out my destiny, which is to be, until my expiration date, laughingly, the servant of man. I continued, I hear they don't even look like Jews anymore, a bunch of dirt farmers with no time to read. They're your own people, Pallet accused, dilating in the nostril, clenching his jaw, and they're under the severest attack. This is not the time to revile them. I had resumed my embroidery. Oh, I sighed. My needle was now deep in the clouds, which were pearl gray and late afternoon. I'm only trying to say that they aren't meant for geographies, but for history. They are not supposed to take up space, but to continue in time. They looked at me with such grief that I decided to consider all sides of the matter. I said, Christ probably had all that trouble, now that you mention it, because he knew he was going to gain the whole world, but he forgot Jerusalem. When you married us, said Pallet, and accused me, did you forget Jerusalem? I never forget a thing, I said. Anyway, guess what I just read? Somewhere that England is bankrupt. The country is wadded with installment paper. Livid's hand trembled as he offered Pallet a light. Nonsense, he said. That's not true. Nonsense. The great British Isle is the tight little fist of the punching arm of the Commonwealth. What's true is true, I said, smiling. Well, I said, since no one stirred, do you think you'll ever get to work today? Either of you? Oh, my dear, I haven't seen you and the boys in over a year. It's quite pleasant and cozy here this morning, said Livid. Yes, isn't it? Said Pallid, the surprised host. Besides, it's Saturday. How do you find the boys? I asked, Livid, the progenitor. American. Rowdy, uncontrolled. Well, you look well, Faith. Plumper, but womanly as well. Very well, said Pallid, pleased. But the boys, Faith, shouldn't they be started on something? Just lining up little plastic cowboys. It's silly, really. They're so young, apologized Pallid, the used boy raiser. You'd both better go to work, I suggested, nodding the pearl gray late afternoon thread. Please put the dishes in the sink first, please. I'm sorry about the eggs. Livid yawned, stretched, peeked at the clock, sighed. Saturday or no, alas, my time is not my own. Got an appointment downtown in about 45 minutes, he said. I do too, said Pallid. I'll join you on the subway. I'm taking a cab, said Livid. I'll split it with you, said Pallid. They left for the bathroom, where they shared things nicely. Shaving equipment, washstand, shower, and so forth. I made the beds and put the aluminum cot away. Livid would find a hotel room by nightfall. I did the dishes and organized the greedy day. Dinosaurs in the morning, park in the afternoon, peanut butter in between, and at the end of it all, to reward us for a week of beans endured, a noble rib roast with little onions, dumplings, and pink apple sauce. Faith, I'm going now, Livid called from the hall. I put my shopping list aside and went to collect the boys, who were wandering among the rooms looking for Robin Hood. Go say goodbye to your father, I whispered. Which one? They asked. The real father, I said. Richard ran to Livid. They shook hands, manfully. Pallid embraced Tonto and was kissed 11 times for his affection. Bye now, Faith, called Livid. Call me if you want anything at all, my dear. Warmly, with sweet propriety, he kissed my cheek. Ascendant. Pallid kissed me with considerable business behind the ear. Goodbye, I said to them. I must admit that they were at least clean and neat, rather attractive, shiny men in their 30s, with the grand affairs of the day ahead of them. Dark night, search for pleasure and oblivion were well ahead. Goodbye, I said. Have a nice day. Goodbye, they said once more, and set off in pride on paths which are not my concern. Part 2. a subject of childhood. At home one Saturday and every Saturday, Richard drew 8x11 portraits of stickmen waving their arms, and Tonto held plastic horse in his hand and named it Tonto because his eyes were painted blue as his has been. I revised the hem of last year's dress in order to be up to the minute, chic and au courant in the midst of spring. Strangers would murmur, "Look at her! Isn't she wonderful? Who's her couturier?" Clifford scrubbed under the shower, singing a Russian folk song. He rose in a treble of cold water to high sea, followed by the scourging of the flesh. At last, after 4 hots and 3 colds, he was strong and happy, and he entered the living room a steaming emanation. His face was round and rosy. He was noticeably hairless on the head, which prevented rain and shower water. What? Prevented rain and shower water from running foolishly down his face? Heavy, dark, sloping brows. Beneath those, his eyes were round and dark, amazed. This Clifford, my close friend, was guileless. He would not hurt a fly, and he was a vegetarian. As always, he was glad to see us. He wrapped a large sunbathing towel around his damp body. "Behold the man!" he shouted, and let the towel fall. He stood for a moment, gleaming and pleasant. Richard and Tonto glanced at him. "Cover yourself, for God's sakes, Clifford," I said. "Take it easy, Faith," he called to the ear of reason. "The world is changing." Actually, propriety did not embarrass him, did not serve him. He peeked from behind the rubber plant where his pants under and over were heaped. When he reappeared, snapped and buttoned, he said, "Wake up! Wake up! What's everyone slouching around for?" He poked Richard in the tummy. "A little muscle tone there, boy. Wake up!" Richard said, "I want to draw." "Clifford, you can draw any time. I'm not always here. Draw tomorrow, Rich. Come on. Ha! Fight me, boy. Fight. Come on. Let's go. Get me. You better get started, Richie, because I'm really going to punch you. Here I come, ready or not." "Here I come," said Tonto, dropping his horse, and he whacked Clifford hard across the kidneys. "Who did that?" asked Clifford. "What boy did that?" Me, said Tonto, jumping up and down. "Did I hurt you bad?" "Killed me. Ah, yes, sir. Yes, you did. And now I'm gonna get you," he whirled. "I'm gonna tickle you, that's what." He raised Tonto high above his head, a disposable item, then pitched him into the air foam belly of the couch. Richard tiptoed with the teddy bear to a gentle rise, the sofa cushion, from which he crowned Clifford 3 times. "I'm getting killed," cried Clifford. "They're all after me. They're very rough." Richard kicked him in the shin. "That's it," said Clifford. "Get it out. Get it all out, boys. Out, out." Tonto spit right in his eye. He wiped his cheek. He feinted and dodged the teddy bear that was coming down again on his bowed head. Tonto leapt onto his back and got a hold of his ears. "Ouch," said Clifford. Richard found a tube of rubber cement in the bookcase and squirted it at Clifford's hairy chest. "I'm wild," said Richard. I'm wild." "So am I," said Tonto. "I'm the wildest boy in the whole park." He tugged at Clifford's ears. "I'll ride you away. I'm an elephant boy." "He's a lazy camel," screamed Richard. "Bubbles, I want you to work." "Pretend I'm the gin," said Tonto in a high wail. "Giddy up, Clifford." Me, said Richard, sinking to the floor. "It's me. I'm a poison snake," he said, slithering to Clifford's foot. "I'm a poison snake," he said, resting his chin on Clifford's instep. "I'm a terrible poison snake," he swore. Then he raised his head like the adder he is, and after a prolonged hiss, with all his new front teeth, he bit poor Clifford above the bone in his Achilles heel, which is his weak left ankle. Oh no, Clifford moaned and then folded neatly at all joints. Mommy, cried Richard, for Clifford fell 12 stone on him. "Oh, it's me," screamed Tonto, an elephant boy thrown by his horse headlong into a trap of table legs. And he was the one I reached first. I hugged him to my lap. "Mommy," he sobbed, "my head hurts me. I wish I could go inside you." Richard lay, a crushed snake, in the middle of the floor without breath, without tears, angry. Well, what of Clifford? He had hoisted his sorrowful self into an armchair and lay there, lisping on a bloody tongue which he himself had bitten. Faith, the accumulator! Bruised and tear-stricken, the children agreed to go to bed. They forgot to say it was too early to nap, and they forgot to ask for their bears. They lay side by side and clutched each other's thumb. Here was the love that myth or legend had imposed on brothers. I re-entered the living room where Clifford sat, a comb like an astrologer's hat on his skin-punctured place. Just exactly there, universal energies converged. The stationary sun, the breathless air in which the planets swing were empowered now to make him, well, to act, and their remarkable art, like aspirin. We've got to have a serious talk, he said. I really can't take those kids. I mean, Faith, you know yourself, I've tried and tried, but you've done something to them. Corrupted their instincts in some way or another. Here we were, having an absolutely marvelous time, rolling around, making all kinds of free noise, and look what happened. Like every other time, someone got hurt. I mean, I'm really hurt. We should have all been relaxed, easy. It should have been easy. Our bodies should have been so easy, and no one should have been hurt, Faith. Do you mean it's my fault that you all got hurt? No doubt about it, Faith. You've done a rotten job. Rotten job, I said. Lousy, he said. I gave him one more chance. Lousy, I asked. Oh my God, stinkin', he said. Therefore, the following, a compendium of motivations and griefs, life to date. Truthfully, Mondays through Fridays, because of success at work, my ego is hot. I am a star. Whoever can be warmed by me, I may oblige. The flat scale stones of abuse that fly into my speedy atmosphere are utterly consumed. Untouched, I glow my little thermodynamic way. On Saturday mornings, in my own home, however, I face the sociological law called the obtrusion of incontrovertibles. For I have raised these kids with one hand typing behind my back to earn a living. I have raised them all alone without a father to identify themselves with in the bathroom like all the other little boys from the playground. Laugh. I was forced by inclement management into a yellow dog contract with Bohemia, such as it survives. I have stuck by it despite the encroachments of kind relatives who offer ski pants, piano lessons, tickets to the rodeo. Meanwhile, I have serviced Richard and Tonto, taught them to keep clean and hold an open heart on the subjects of childhood. We have, in fact, risen mightily from toilets in the hall and scavenging in great cardboard boxes at the Salvation Army for underwear and socks. It has been my perversity to do this alone, except for the 1 year their father, who was living in Chicago with Claudia Lowen still, and she was horrified that he only sent bicycles on the 5th birthday. A whole year of gas and electricity, rent and phone payments followed. One day she caught him in the swiveling light of truth, a grand figure who took a strong stand on a barrel of soap suds and went down clean. He is now on the Gold Coast of another continent, enchanted by the survival of clandestine civilizations. Courts of kitchen drama cannot touch him. All the same, I gave Clifford one more opportunity to renege and be my friend. I said, stinking? I raised them? Lousy? This time he didn't bother to answer because he had become busy gathering his clothes from different parts of the room. Air was filtering out of my 2 collapsing lungs. Water rose bubbling to enter, and I would have died of instantaneous pneumonia. Something I had never heard of if my hand had not got hold of a glass ashtray and, entirely apart from my personal decision, flung it. Clifford was on his hands and knees looking for the socks he'd left under the armchair on Friday. His back was to me, his head convenient to the trajectory, and he would have passed away a blithering idiot had I not been blind with tears and only torn off what is anyway a vestigial earlobe. Still, Clifford is a gentle person, a consortment of sweet dispositions. The sight of all the blood paralyzed him. He hulked, shuddering. He waited on his knees to be signaled once more by Death, the sheriff from the sticks. You don't say things like that to a woman, I whispered. You damn stupid jackass. You just don't say anything like that to a woman. Wash yourself, moron, you're bleeding to death. I left him alone to tie a tourniquet around his windpipe or doctor himself according to the present-day plans for administering first aid in the great globular and coming war. I tiptoed into the bedroom to look at the children. They were asleep. I covered them and kissed Tonto, my baby, and said, "Richard, what a big boy you are," I said. I kissed him, too. I sat on the floor, rubbing my cheek on Richard's rubbly fleece blanket until their sweet breathing and deep sleep quieted me. A couple of hours later, Richard and Tonto woke up, picking their noses, sneezing grumpy, and then glad. They admired the tic-tac-toes of Band-Aid I had created to honor their wounds. Richard ate soup and Tonto ate ham. They didn't inquire about Clifford, since he had a key which always opened the door in or out. That key lay at rest in the earth of my rubber plant. I felt discontinued. There was no one I wanted to offer it to. "Still hungry, boys?" I asked. "No, sir," said Tonto. "I'm full up to here," leveling at the eyes. "I'll tell you what." I came through with a stunning notion. "Go on down and play." "Don't shove, miss," said Richard. I looked out the front window. 4 flights below, armed to the teeth, Lester Stukoff waited for an enemy. Carelessly, I gave Richard this classified information. "Is he all alone?" asked Richard. "He is," I said. Okay. Richard gazed sadly at me. "Only, Faith, remember, I'm going down because I feel like it, not because you told me." "Well, naturally," I said. "Not me," said Tonto. "Oh, don't be silly. You go too, Tonto. So nice and sunny. Take your new guns that Daddy sent you. Go on, Tonto." "No, sir. I hate Richard and I hate Lester. I hate those guns. They're baby guns. He thinks I'm a baby. You better send him a picture." "Oh, Tonto. He thinks I suck my thumb and he thinks I wet my bed. That's why he sends me baby guns." No, honey. You're no baby. Everyone knows you're a big boy." "He is not," said Richard. "And he does so suck his thumb and he does so wet the bed." "Richard," I said. "Richard, if you don't have anything good to say, shut your rotten mouth." That doesn't help Tonto to keep reminding him. "Goodbye," said Richard, refusing to discuss, but very high and firstborn. Sometimes he is nasty, but he's never lazy. He returned in 45 seconds from the first floor to shout, "As long as he doesn't wet my bed, what do I care?" Tonto did not hear him. He was brushing his teeth, which he sometimes does vigorously 7 times a day, hoping they'll loosen. I think they are loosening. I served myself hot coffee in the living room. I organized comfort in the armchair, poured the coffee black into a white mug that said Mama, tipped cigarette ash into a ceramic hand hollowed by Richard. I looked into the square bright window of daylight to ask myself the sapping question. What is man that woman lies down to adore him? At the very question mark, Tonto came softly, sneaky in socks, to say, "I have to holler something to Richard, Mother." "Don't lean out that window, Tonto, please. It makes me nervous." "I have to tell him something." "No." "Oh, yes," he said. "It's awful important, Faith. I really have to." How could I permit it? If he should fall, everyone would think I had neglected him, drinking beer in the kitchen or putting eye cream on at the vanity table behind closed doors. Besides, I would be bereaved forever. My grandmother mourned all her days for some kid who died of earache at the age of 5. All the other children in their own municipal pension and federal welfare years gathered to complain at her deathside. She was 91 and heard her murmur, Oh, Anita, breathe a little. Try to breathe, my little baby." With tears in my eyes, I said, "Okay, Tonto. I'll hold on to you, and you can tell Richard anything you have to." He leaned out into the air. I held fast to one thick little knee. "Richie!" he howled. "Richie! Hey, Richie!" Richard looked up, probably shielding his eyes, searching for the voice. "Richie! Hey, listen! I'm playing with your new birthday present, Army Fort and all them men!" Then he banged the window shut as if he knew that nothing about the nature of glass and tore into the bathroom to brush his teeth once more in triumphant ritual, singing through toothpaste and gargle, "I bet he's mad," and then in a lower key, "He deserves it, he stinks." "So do you!" I shouted furiously. While I sighed for my grandmother's loss, he had raised up his big mouth against his brother. "You really stink! Now listen to me, I want you to get out here. Go on down and play. I need 10 minutes all alone, Anthony. I might kill you if you stay up here." He reappeared, smelling like peppermint sticks at Christmas. He stood on one foot, looked up into my high eyes, and said, "Okay, Faith, kill me." I had to immediately sit then. so he could believe I was his size and stop picking on me. Please, I said gently. Go out with your brother. I have to think, Tonto. I don't wanna. I don't have any place. I don't have to go any place I don't wanna, he said. I want to stay right here with you. Please, Tonto. I have to clean the house and you won't be able to do a thing or start a good game or anything. I don't care, he said. I want to stay here with you and I want to stay right next to you. Okay, Tonto. Okay, I'll tell you what. Go to your room for a couple minutes, honey. Go ahead. No, he said, climbing onto my lap. I want to be a baby and stay right next to you every minute. Oh, Tonto, I said, please, Tonto. I tried to pry him loose, but he put his arms around my neck and curled up right there in my lap, thumb and mouth to be my baby. Tonto, I said, despairing of one solitary minute. Why can't you go play with Richard? You'll have fun. No, he said. I don't care if Richard goes away or Clifford. They can go do whatever they want. I don't even care. I'm never going to go away. I'm going to stay right next to you forever, Faith. Tonto, I said. He took his thumb out of his mouth and placed his open hand, its fingers stretching wide across my breast. I love you, Mama, he said. Love, I said. Oh, love, Anthony, I know. I held him so and rocked him. I cradled him. I closed my eyes and leaned on his dark head. But the sun in its course emerged from among the water towers of downtown office buildings and suddenly shone white and bright on me. Then through the short, fat fingers of my son, interred forever, like a black and white barred king in Alcatraz, my heart lit up in stripes.
Here's the story, Friends, again by Grace Paley. To put us at our ease, to quiet our hearts as she lay dying, our dear friend Selena said, life, after all, has not been an unrelieved horror. You know, I did have many wonderful years with her. She pointed to a child who leaned out of a portrait on the wall, long brown hair, white pinafore, head and shoulders forward. Eagerness, said Susan. Anne closed her eyes. On the same wall, 3 little girls were photographed in a schoolyard. They were in furious discussion. They were holding hands. Right in the middle of the coffee table, framed in autumn colors, a handsome young woman of 18 sat on an enormous horse, aloof, disinterested, a rider. One night, this young woman, Selena's child, was found in a rooming house in a distant city, dead. The police called. They said, do you have a daughter named Abby? And with him, too, our friend Selena said. We had good times, Max and I. You know that. There were no photographs of him. He was married to another woman and had a new stalwart girl of about 6 to whom no harm would ever come, her mother believed. Our dear Selena had gotten out of bed. Heavily, but with comic dance, she soft-shoed to the bathroom singing, those were the days, my friend. Later that evening, Anne, Susan, and I were enduring our 5-hour train ride to home. After 1 hour of silence and 1 hour of coffee and the sandwiches Selena had given us, she actually stood, leaned her big, soft, excavated body against the kitchen table to make those sandwiches. Anne said, well, we'll never see her again. Who says? Anyway, listen, said Susan. Think of it. Abby isn't the only kid who died. What about that great guy? Remember Bill Dalrymple? He was a non-cooperator or deserter. And Bob Simon. They were killed in automobile accidents. Matthew, Jeannie, Mike, remember Al Lurie? He was murdered on 6th Street. And that little kid, Brenda, who OD'd on your roof, Anne? The tendency, I suppose, is to forget. You people don't remember them. What do you mean, you people? Anne asked. You're talking to us. I began to apologize for not knowing them all. Most of them were older than my kids, I said. Of course, the child Abby was exactly in my time of knowing, and in all my places of paying attention. The park, the school, our street. But oh, it's true. Selena's Abby was not the only one of that beloved generation of our children murdered by cars, lost to war, drugs, to madness. Selena's main problem, Anne said. You know, she didn't tell the truth. What? A few hot, human, truthful words are powerful enough, Anne thinks, to steam all of God's chemical mistakes and society's slimy lies out of her life. We all believed in that power, my friends and I, but sometimes the heat. Anyway, I always thought Selena had told us a lot. For instance, we knew she was an orphan. There were 6, 7 other children. She was the youngest. She was 42 years old before someone informed her that her mother had not died in childbirthing her. It was some terrible sickness, and that she had lived close to her mother's body, at her breast, in fact, until she was 8 months old. Whew, said Selena. What a relief! I'd always felt I was the one who'd killed her. Your family stinks, we said. They really held you up for grief. Oh, people, she said, forget it. They did a lot of nice things for me, too. Me and Abby. Forget it. Who has the time? That's what I mean, said Anne. Selena should have gone after them with an axe. More information. Selena's 2 sisters brought her to a home. They were ashamed that at 16 and 19, they could not take care of her. They kept hugging her. They were sure she'd cry. They took her to her room, well, not a room, a dormitory with about 8 beds. This is your bed, Lena. This is your table for your things. This little drawer is for your toothbrush. All for me? She asked. No one else can use it? Only me? That's all? Artie can't come? Frankie can't come? Right? Believe me, Selena said, those were happy days at home. Facts, said Anne. Just facts. Not necessarily the truth. I don't think it's right to complain about the character of the dying or start hustling all their motives into the spotlight like that. Isn't it amazing enough, the bravery of that private, inclusive, intentional community? It wouldn't help not to be brave, said Selena. You'll see. She wanted to get back to bed. Susan moved to help her. Thanks, our Selena said, leaning on another person for the first time in her entire life. The trouble is, when I stand, it hurts me here all the way down my back. Nothing they can do about it. All the chemotherapy, no more chemistry left in me to therapeute. Ha! Did you know, before I came to New York and met you, I used to work in that hospital. I was supervisor in gynecology, nursing. They were my friends, the doctors. They weren't so snotty then. David Clark, big surgeon. He couldn't look at me last week. He kept saying, Lena, like that. We were in North Africa the same year, 44, I think. I told him, Davy, I've been around a long enough time. I haven't missed too much. He knows it, but I didn't Want to make him look at me. Ugh, my damn feet are a pain in the neck. Recent research, said Susan, tells us that it's the neck that is the pain in the feet. Always something new, said Selena, our dear friend. On the way back to the bed, she stopped at her desk. There were about 20 snapshots scattered across it. The baby, the child, the young woman. Here, she said to me, take this one. It's a shot of you and Abby and your son Richard in front of the school. 3rd grade. What a day. The show those kids put on. What a bunch of kids. What's Richard doing now? Oh, who knows? Horsing around someplace. Spain. These days it's Spain. Who knows where he is? They're all the same. Why did I say that? I knew exactly where he was. He writes. In fact, he found a broken phone and was able to call every day for a week, mostly to give orders to his brother, but also to say, "Are you okay? Ma? How's your new boyfriend? Did he smile yet?" The kids. They're all the same, I said. It was only politeness, I think, not to pour my boy's light, noisy face into that dark afternoon. Richard used to say in his early, mean teens, "You'd sell us down the river to keep Selena happy and innocent." It's true. Whenever Selena would say, I don't know, Abby has some peculiar friends, I'd answer for stupid comfort, "Oh, you should see Richard's." Still, he's in Spain, Selena said. At least you know that. It's probably interesting. He'll learn a lot. Richard is a wonderful boy, Faith. He acts like a wise guy, but he's not. You know, the night Abby died, when the police called me and told me, that was my first night's sleep in 2 years. I knew where she was. Selena said this very matter-of-factly, just offering a few informative sentences. But Anne, listening, said, "Oh, she called out to us. Oh," and began to sob. Her straightforwardness had become an arrow and gone right into her own heart. Then a deep, tear-drying breath. "I want a picture too," she said. Yes, wait, I have one here someplace. Abby and Judy and that Spanish kid, Victor. Where is it? Ah, here. 3 9-year-old children sat high on that long-armed sycamore in the park, dangling their legs on someone's patient head, smooth, dark hair parted in the middle. Was that head Kitty's? Our dear friend laughed. "Another great day," she said. "Wasn't it? I remember you two sizing up the men. I had one at the time, I thought. Some joke. Here, take it. I have 2 copies. But you ought to get it enlarged. When this you see, remember me." Ha ha. Well, girls, excuse me, I mean ladies, it's time for me to rest. She took Susan's arm and continued that awful walk to her bed. We didn't move. We had a long journey ahead of us and had expected a little more comforting before we set off. "No," she said, "you'll only miss the express. I'm not in much pain. I've got lots of painkillers. See?" The tabletop was full of little bottles. "I just want to lie down and think of Abby." It was true. The local could cost us an extra 2 hours at least. I looked at Anne. It had been hard for her to come at all. Still, we couldn't move. We stood there before Selena in a row. 3 old friends. Selena pressed her lips together, ordered her eyes into cold distance. I know that face. Once, years ago, when the children were children, it had been placed modestly in front of Jay Hoffner, the principal of the elementary school. He'd said, No, not without training. You cannot tutor these kids. There are real problems. You have to know how to teach. Our PTA had decided to offer some one-to-one tutorial to help for the Spanish kids who were stuck in crowded classrooms with exhausted teachers among little middle-class achievers. He had said in a written communication to show seriousness, and then in personal confrontation to prove seriousness, that he could not allow it. And the Board of Ed itself had said no. All this no-ness was to lead to some terrible events in the schools and neighborhoods of our poor, yes-requiring city. But most of the women on our PTA were independent by necessity and disposition. We were, in fact, the soft-speaking, tough souls of anarchy. I had Fridays off that year. At about 11 a.m., I'd bypass the principal's office and run up to the 4th floor. I'd take Robert Figueroa to the end of the hall, and we'd work away at storytelling for about 20 minutes. Then we would write the beautiful letters of the alphabet, invented by smart foreigners long ago to fool time and distance. That day, Selena and her stubborn face remained in the office for at least 2 hours. Finally, Mr. Hoffner, besieged, said that because she was a nurse, she would be allowed to help out by taking the littlest children to the modern, difficult toilet. Some of them, he said, had just come from the barbarous hills beyond Maracau. Selena said, okay, she'd do that. In the toilet, she taught the little girls which way to wipe, as she had taught her own little girl a couple of years earlier. At 3 o'clock, she brought them home for cookies and milk. The children of that year ate cookies in her kitchen until the end of 6th grade. Now, what did we learn in that year of my Friday afternoons off? The following. Though the world cannot be changed by talking to one child at a time, it may at least be known. Anyway, Selena placed into our eyes for long remembrance that useful, stubborn face. She said, no, listen to me, you people, please. I don't have lots of time. What I want to lie down and think about Abby. Nothing special, just think about her, you know? In the train, Susan fell asleep immediately. She woke up from time to time because the speed of the new wheels and the resistance of the old track gave some terrible jolts. Once she opened her eyes wide and said, you know, Anne's right. You don't get sick like that for nothing. I mean, she didn't even mention him. Why should she? She hadn't even seen him, I said. Susan, you still have him-itis, the dread disease of females. Yeah, and you don't? Anyway, he was around quite a bit. He was there every day nearly when the kid died. Abby, I didn't like to hear the kid. I wanted to say Abby, the way I've said Selena, so those names can take thickness and strength and fall back into the world with their weight. Abby, you know, was a wonderful child. She was in Richard's classes every class till high school. Good-hearted girl from the beginning. Noticeably kind. For a kid, I mean. Smart. That's true, said Anne. Very kind. She'd give away Selena's last shirt. Oh, yes. They were all wonderful little girls and wonderful little boys. Chrissy is wonderful, Susan said. She is, I said. Middle kids aren't supposed to be, but she is. She put herself through college. I didn't have a cent. And now she has this fellowship. And you know, she never did take any crap from boys. She's something. Anne went swaying up the aisle to the bathroom. First she said, "Oh, all of them. Just wonderful." "I loved Selena," Susan said, "but she never talked to me enough. Maybe she talked to you women more about things, men." Then Susan fell asleep. Anne sat down opposite me. She looked straight into my eyes with a narrow squint. It often connotes accusation. "Be careful. You're wrecking your laugh lines," I said. "Screw you," she said. "You're kidding around. Do you realize I don't know where Mickey is? You know, you've been lucky. You always have been, since you were a little kid. Papa and Mama's darling." As is usual in conversations, I said a couple of things out loud and kept a few structured remarks for interior mulling and righteousness, I thought. She's never even met my folks. I thought, what a rotten thing to say. Luck. Isn't it something like an insult? I said, "Annie, I'm only 48. There's lots of time for me to be totally wrecked. If I live, I mean." Then I tried to knock wood, but we were sitting in plush and leaning on plastic. "Wood," I shouted. "Please, some wood. Anybody here have a matchstick?" But clearly, nothing in my life can compare to hers. A son, a boy of 15 who disappears before your very eyes into a darkness or a light behind his own, from which neither hugging nor hitting can bring him. If you shout, "Come back, come back," he won't come. "Mickey, Mickey, Mickey," we once screamed, as though he were 20 miles away instead of right in front of us in a kitchen chair, but he refused to return. And when he did, 12 hours later, he left immediately for California. "Well, some bad things have happened in my life," I said. "What? You were born a woman? Is that it?" She was, of course, mocking me this time, referring to an old discussion about feminism and Judaism, actually on the prism of isms. Both of those do have to be looked at together once in a while. "Well," I said, "my mother died a couple of years ago, and I still feel it. I think, Ma, sometimes, and I lose my breath. I miss her. You understand that? Your mother's 76. You have to admit it's nice still having her." "She's very sick," Anne said. "Half the time she's out of it." I decided not to describe my mother's death. I could have done so and made Anne even more miserable. But I thought I'd save that for her next attack on me. These constrictions of her spirit were coming closer and closer together. Probably a great enmity was about to be born. Susan's eyes opened. "The death or dying of someone near or dear often makes people irritable," she stated. She's been taking a course in relationships and interrelationships. The real name of my seminar is Skills, Personal Friendship, and Community. It's a very good course, despite your snide remarks. While we talked, a number of cities passed us, going in the opposite direction. I had tried to look at New London through the dusk of the windows. Now I was missing New Haven. The conductor explained, smiling, "Lady, if the windows were clean, half of you'd be dead. The tracks are lined with sharpshooters." Do you believe that? I hate people to talk that way. "He may be exaggerating," Susan said, "but don't wash the window." A man leaned across the aisle. "Ladies," he said, "I do believe it. According to what I hear of this part of the country, it don't seem unplausible." Susan turned to see if he was worth engaging in political dialogue. You've forgotten Selina already, Anne said. All of us have. Then you'll make this nice memorial service for her, and everyone will stand up and say a few words, and then we'll forget her again, for good. What'll you say at the memorial, Faith? It's not right to talk like that. She's not dead yet, Annie. Yes, she is, said Anne. We discovered the next day that, give or take an hour or two, Anne had been correct. It was a combination. David Clark, surgeon, said of being sick unto real death and having a tabletop full of little bottles. Now, why are you taking all those hormones? Susan had asked Selina a couple of years earlier. They were visiting New Orleans. It was Mardi Gras. Oh, they're mostly vitamins, Selina said. Besides, I want to be young and beautiful. She made a joking pirouette. Susan said, that's absolutely ridiculous. But Susan's 7 or 8 years younger than Selina. What did she know? Because people do want to be young and beautiful. When they meet in the street, male or female, if they're getting older, they look at each other's face a little ashamed. It's clear they want to say, excuse me, I didn't mean to draw attention to mortality and gravity all at once. I didn't want to remind you, my dear friend, of our coming eviction, first from liveliness, then from life. To which most of the time the friend's eyes will courteously reply, my dear, it's nothing at all. I hardly noticed. Luckily, I learned recently how to get out of that deep well of melancholy. Anyone can do it. You grab at roots of the littlest future, sometimes just stubs of conversation. Though some believe you miss a great deal of depth by not sinking down, down, down. Susan, I asked, you still seeing Ed Flores? Went back to his wife. Luckily, she didn't kill you, said Anne. I'd never fool around with a Spanish guy. They all have tough ladies back in the barrio. No, said Susan. She's unusual. I met her at a meeting. We had an amazing talk. Louisa is a very fine woman. She's one of the office worker organizers I told you about. She only needs him 2 more years, she says, because the kids, they're girls, need to be watched a little in their neighborhood. The neighborhood is definitely not good. He's a good father, but not such a good husband. I'd call that a word to the wise. Well, you know me. I don't want a husband. I like a male person around. I hate to do without. Anyway, listen to this. She, Louisa, whispers in my ear the other day. She whispers, Susie, in 2 years, you still want him? I promise you, you got him. Really, I may still want him then. He's only about 45 now. Still got a lot of spunk. I'll have my degree in 2 years. Chrissy will be out of the house. 2 years? In 2 years we'll all be dead, said Anne. I know she didn't mean all of us. She meant Mickey. That boy of hers would surely be killed in one of the drugstores or whorehouses of Chicago, New Orleans, San Francisco. I'm in a big, beautiful city, he said when he called last month. Makes New York look like a garbage tank. Mickey, where? Ha ha, he said and hung up. Soon he'd be picked up for vagrancy, dealing, and small thievery, or simply screaming dirty words at night under a citizen's window. Then Anne would fly to the town, or not fly to the town to disentangle him, depending on a confluence of financial reality and psychiatric advice. How is Mickey? Selena had asked. In fact, that was her first sentence when we came, solemn and embarrassed, into her sunny front room that was full of the light and shadow of windy courtyard trees. We said, each in her own way, "How are you feeling, Selena?" She said, "Okay, first things first. Let's talk about important things. How's Richard? How's Tonto? How's John? How's Chrissy? How's Judy? How's Mickey?" "I don't want to talk about Mickey," said Anne. "Oh, let's talk about him. Talk about him," Selena said, taking Anne's hand. "Let's all think before it's too late. How did it start?" "Oh, for God's sakes, talk about him." "Susan and I were smart enough to keep our mouths shut. Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything. Why? Where? Everybody has an idea, theories, and writes articles. Nobody knows." Anne said this sternly. She didn't whine. She wouldn't lean too far into Selena's softness, but listening to Selena speak Mickey's name, she could sit in her chair more easily. I watched. It was interesting. Anne breathed deeply in and out, the way we've leaned in our Thursday night yoga class. She was able to rest her body a little bit. We were riding the rails of the trough called Park Avenue in the Bronx. Susan had turned from us to talk to the man across the aisle. She was explaining that the war in Vietnam was not yet over and would not be, as far as she was concerned, until we repaired the dikes we'd bombed and paid for some of the hopeless ecological damage. He didn't see it that way. 50,000 American lives, our own boys, we'd paid, he said. He asked us if we agreed with Susan. Every word, we said. "You don't look like hippies," he laughed. Then his face changed. As the resident face reader, I decided he was thinking, adventure. He may have hit a motherlode of late counterculture in 3 opinionated left-wing ladies. That was the nice part of his face. The other part was the sly, out-of-town husband in New York look. "I'd like to see you again," he said to Susan. "Oh? Well, come to dinner day after tomorrow. Only 2 of my kids will be home. You ought to have at least one decent meal while in New York." Kids, his face thought. "Thanks." "Sure," he said. "I'll come." Anne muttered, "She's impossible. She did it again." "Oh, Susan's okay," I said. "She's just right in there. Isn't that good?" "This is a long train ride," said Anne. Then we were in the darkness that precedes Grand Central. "We're irritable," Susan explained to her new pal. "We're angry with our friend Selena for dying. The reason is we want her to be present when we're dying. We all require a mother or mother surrogate to fix our pillows on that final occasion, and we were counting on her to be that person." "I know just what you mean," he said. "You'd like to have someone around. A little fuss, maybe." Something like that. Right, Faith? It always takes me a minute to slide under the style of her public address system. I agreed. Yes. The train stopped hard in a grinding agony of opposing technologies. "Right, wrong, who cares?" Anne said. "She didn't have to die. She really wrecked everything." "Oh, Annie," I said. "Shut up, will you? Both of you," said Anne, nearly breaking our knees as she jammed past us and out of the train. Then Susan, like a New York hostess, began to tell that man all our private troubles, the mistake of the World Trade Center, West Way, the decay of the South Bronx, the rage in Williamsburg. She rose with him on the escalator. gabbing into evening friendship and hopefully a happy night. At home, Anthony, our youngest son, said, "Hello, you just missed Richard. He's in Paris now. He had to call collect." Collect from Paris? He saw my sad face and made one of the herb teas used by his peer group to calm their overwrought natures. He does want to improve my pretty good health and spirits. His friends have a book that says a person should, if properly nutritioned, live forever. He wants me to give it a try. He also believes that the human race, its brains and good looks, will end in his time. At about 11:30, he went out to live the pleasures of his 18-year-old nighttime life. At 3 a.m., he found me washing the floors and making little apartment repairs. "More tea, Mom?" he said. He sat down to keep me company. "Okay, Faith, I know you feel terrible, but how come Selena never realized about Abby?" "Anthony, what the hell do I realize about you?" "Come on, you had to be blind. I was just a little kid and I saw, honest to God, Mom." "Listen, Tonto, basically Abby was okay. She was. You don't know yet what their times can do to a person. Here she goes with her goody goodies. Everything is so groovy, wonderful, far out, terrific. Next thing you'll say people are darling, and the world is so nice and round that Union Carbide will never blow it up." I have never said anything as hopeful as that. And why, to all our knowledge of that sad day, did Tonto, at 3 a.m., have to add the fact of the world? The next night, Max called from North Carolina. "How's Selena?" "I'm flying up," he said. "I have one early morning appointment, then I'm canceling everything." At 7 a.m., Annie called. "I had barely brushed my morning teeth. It was hard," she said. "The whole damn thing. I don't mean Selena. All of us. In the train. None of you seemed real to me." Real? Reality, huh? Listen, how about coming over for breakfast? I don't have to get going until after 9. I have this neat sourdough rye. "No," she said. "Oh, Christ, no. No!" I remember Anne's eyes and the hat she wore the day we first looked at each other. Our babies had just stepped howling out of the sandbox on their new walking legs. We picked them up. Over their sandy heads we smiled. I think a bond was sealed then, at least as useful as the vow we'd all sworn with husbands to whom we're no longer married. Hindsight, usually looked down upon, is probably as valuable as foresight, since it does include a few facts. Meanwhile, Anthony's world, poor, dense, defenseless thing, rolls round and round. Living and dying are fastened to its surface and stuffed into its softer parts. He was right to call my attention to its suffering and danger. He was right to harass my responsible nature. But I was right to invent for my friends and our children a report on these private deaths and the condition of our lifelong attachments.
Oh, thank you very much, ladies. I have to tell you, I think Grace Paley would be pleased to hear her words read so nicely.
Thanks.
It's a beautiful piece of continuity, and it's a beautiful tribute to lifelong friendships and attachments and families. I am so pleased that you would agree to read this. And I'm glad that I know you.
Arranging this and putting these two stories together and Tessa and me together.
Yeah, Pretty good deal, huh?
Absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you, next month, we've got something to look forward to as well. The wonderful words of Rick Bass. If you have never read stories by Rick Bass, you owe it to yourself. And we have wonderful, wonderful readers. Gene Schumann, who is a tremendous actor in Denver, and Mo LeMay, who is incomparable. And I think most of the people in the Roaringford Valley know Mo. So we will be seeing them next third Wednesday at 7 p.m., as well as later, and through the good graces of Thunder River Theater. I can't thank those people enough and Pitkin County Library enough for continuing this wonderful program. And I wish you all the best. Have a good night. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Sean. I'll look for you, good people, next month. Thank you so much. Good night.
Mwah.
Mwah.